A Chance of Showers is a brilliant episode of good advice, and it might be one of my favourites so far. This is the 10th episode of the second season. This is directed by Bessell, and there will be spoilers as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And as always, in the intro, we have Susan with some patients, and it's a retired couple who don't seem to really have any need for therapy. And then they say they just like her company. She reminds them of their daughter, and they want to call her by their daughter's name. Finally, they have something to unpack. Not a bad way to start things off. The rest of the narrative is about this homeless individual. Susan and Henriette and Michael meet him down at the recycling bank, and he's called Bernard. He's played by Xander Berkeley. And initially, Susan's behaviour is not great. She tries to hide her purse in the car. Bearing in mind, Bernard gave no indication that he was violent or a threat, and she definitely wants to get away very quickly. However, in her haste to hide her purse, she accidentally shuts the car door with the keys on the inside. And she's trying to get it open, and Bernard suggests using a coat hanger. And he actually uses the coat hanger and manages to get the keys, and everything's fine. And Susan tries to offer him money. And he says no, but there is something she can do for him. He would like to have a shower in her house because it's difficult to get a hot shower anywhere. And after a bit of hesitation, she finally said yes, gave her address, and she told everybody else about it when she got back to the office. And what's really interesting here is that there are a lot of different responses to this. And obviously a lot of people are saying, why did you do that? You're going to let this strange person in your house. And I will be honest, on the one hand, I feel like I would have said yes as well. I don't have a car, so I'm never going to be in that exact situation. But I feel like if a homeless person or anybody in need asked me if they could use my shower, I'd really struggle to say no. But at the same time, inviting anybody, regardless of whether they're homeless, inviting any stranger into your home is always going to be a risk. So I can understand why some people were surprised that she said yes, but I'm pleased that she did. And again, on the one hand, it's kind of a grey area here because everybody kind of goes to Susan's house, and by everybody, I mean Paige and Artie and Jack, because I guess they want to meet the homeless person, but they also want to help. Paige brings over a very expensive cheesecake, and, well, Susan's logic wasn't great. She said you can't give him that because he'll never want to eat cheap cheesecake afterwards. But my thought was, why spend $30 on a cheesecake when that homeless individual could use that money for so much? You could buy so much food for him and for other people. So it wasn't the great use of money, but at the end of the day, it's the thought that counts. And Artie brings over an old suit that he no longer wears, which again was really thoughtful as well. On the one hand, yes, they're coming over with things, but I don't agree that everybody comes over to see the homeless person like he's a spectacle. In fact, when Bernard does arrive, he kind of jokingly asks Susan if she sold tickets to this event. But at the same time, obviously Susan's inviting a stranger into her house. So I'm not against the idea of having her friends there, just in case something went horribly wrong. And Bernard turns up, and again, he seems quite nice. He doesn't come across as a threat. Susan's still nervous. She makes a bit of a fool of herself as she shows him where the shower is. And then, I will say, a bulk of the episode after that was maybe a little slow. I feel like we needed just something else happening. I realised that why they did it to create suspense, because time is passing, and he's still in the shower. And I think it got up to 55 minutes or something, or 50 minutes. He was still in the shower, and people were starting to think, well, maybe he's doing something, maybe he's stealing something, maybe something has gone wrong. And I get what they were doing. They were building suspense so that we, the viewer, could think, well, why is he taking so long? But I just feel like that dragged on maybe a little bit longer than I would have liked. But eventually, he comes down, and he hadn't done anything he shouldn't have done. And in fact, even better than that, he remembers that he had the money from the recycling bank because Susan was in a hurry and she left her bottles or whatever they were and asked Bernard if he would mind giving them to the bank once it opened. And he said yes. And after his shower, he remembered he still had that. And he gave it to Susan and said, here's your money, maybe it can go towards the water bill. So even though he was in desperate need of a shower, he was still thinking of repaying, I mean, it was Susan's money, but still thinking of how to give that money back to Susan, because he knows that he's used some of her hot water and some of her energy, and that's just so sweet. And in that moment, I think it was Jack who realised, first of all, that this is just a good guy. There's no reason to suspect him of anything just because he's homeless. And he offered him a lift home. And I really started to get quite emotional at that point, because it was really great to see people finally just realising that Bernard is just a regular person who's down on his luck. And I think that that's such a beautiful message. I always get drawn to stories, to films and TV show episodes about homeless people, because I think they're so important. Because most of us are one bit of bad news away from being in that situation. It can happen so easily, particularly in the UK, where there's just no support for anybody ever. And obviously that's a slight exaggeration. There is some support, but not for the right people and not in the right places. And it's a scary, scary thought. And I love the fact that the episode says there's absolutely no need. Obviously, you need to proceed with caution with any stranger, but there is no need to automatically assume that somebody is a bad person just because they're homeless. And we get to see some bizarre behaviours. We get to see some interesting attitudes. But again, people's thoughts were in the right place. Paige brought a treat over. I still think that it's a waste of money. I feel like that could have been better used. But either way, she wanted to do something nice. Artie brought over a suit. The problem with that was that Susan had pointed out that he doesn't exactly have a lot of places to wear the suit. But I would argue that actually having a suit and being able to dress smartly after his shower could be really useful if he has a job interview. Because I imagine one of the stumbling blocks when you're homeless, and if you don't have a job, I know some people are homeless with a job, but trying to get employment when you're homeless must be really difficult, even more so, because how do you turn up looking presentable if, as we see with Bernard, you don't have proper access to anywhere to get cleaned and look presentable? And it kind of is a difficult situation for multiple reasons. So actually, I don't think the suit was a bad idea. And Michael as a child was adorable. He was very excited about the homeless person, very excited about Bernard coming to the house. He did want to kind of take a picture of him to take into school, which is because he was in his house. A homeless person was in his house. How different, how bizarre. And that was a strange attitude to have. But also, I've never known a child be excited about a homeless person being in their house. And there are two reasons for that, two potential reasons. One, it doesn't happen. Homeless people don't get invited into people's homes, which I think is the more likely scenario. Or it happens regularly and it's just run-of-the-mill and children don't need to get excited about it because it's commonplace. And I wish that was the more realistic scenario. Either way, I think this is a really beautiful episode of good advice. The performances were great, the narrative was great. Yeah, it slowed down a little bit towards the end, but, well, just before the end when Bernard was in the shower. But other than that, I thought A Chance of Showers was a pretty fabulous episode of good advice.